So this is going to be a continuation of the first video that I talked about everything is political. And when I discussed the concept of everything being political, most of what I was referring to was that everything that is created is political. But I want to get into the actual into other areas and talk about specific scenarios that I've encountered, which have affected why I have the political beliefs that I have in the way that I have. And much of this is due to politicking that I sort of learned due to the circumstances of where I live and the circumstances within my life. So, at a very young age, I already picked up on the fact that there was a form of politics. And so there are naturally two forms of politics that you can see as examples in the real world. Obviously, there is what I call true politics, which is where you actually vote for representatives who then go to the government. They go work in a office of government, and they're supposed to represent your interest as part of their mission. And then there is also the pseudo-politic. Now, the pseudo-politic is much harder to define and much more difficult to see unless you have a keen eye. The form of pseudo-politics can take place in many forms, whether it's the workplace, whether it's the whether it be local boards, things that you want to, HOAs, anything that has a hierarchical structure, you can actually do pseudo politics with. Now, a lot of people don't like that happens, but the whole point of it is that politics are a vector for power. And anything that has the capability to have a vector for power or have any position of power, if you can attain a position of power within something, there is a form of politicking to be had. And all of those types of politics are pseudo-politic. They are not actually policy issues. They are not actual. They are not actual discussions about political philosophy or ideology. What they are is a vector for people by which to play the game of politics, to usurp another and gain power. And that is essentially what, if you read this, which I have here, sorry. This book is the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. And if you read this book, it becomes very apparent that you understand that there are all kinds of political games being played as a vector for power in every aspect of your life. So I want to give a few life examples and kind of prove the theory that everything is political. Throughout my childhood and what I enjoyed doing, I liked playing in the youth baseball league. And that was mainly, my parents wanted to get me active, get me playing sports, and get me interested. And baseball was just the right sport because I didn't have to be too active. It was still fun, and I enjoyed being able to hit the ball. That was a fun thing for me. I loved batting more than anything, obviously. But once you play in a youth league, especially a more public league, maybe in a more private league where they know the players and they know that they're already vetted. Maybe if there's some sort of system already there, but I assume there would be this political game. But in youth sports, especially sort of a city-run event, there is a form of politics that is played, and it is obviously of the form of the pseudo-politics that is played whenever coaches' kids are selected for the best position on the field. They are also put, they automatically get all voted to go to the All-Star team. I only got picked for the All-Star team once, and that's because the coach actually liked me, and you know, uh, him and my son. I mean, no, me and his son. I think dad brain, but me and his son got along well, so that he actually put me on the All Star team that one year. Um, but other than that, I didn't make the All Star team ever again, despite and my granddad was a great resource for this. He tried to come to almost every game, and when he went to every game that he went to, he would keep the batting averages for every player. Just because he wasn't necessarily an official bookkeeper, but he would keep the batting averages just because he wanted to see how I stacked up, and often I would have the best batting average. So he even totaled my throughout the season a couple times, and he would come back to me and say, "Hey, you batted this for the whole season," which is awesome. He was a really stat based guy and really interested in all that kind of stuff. It was really fun to see him whenever he got into that kind of stuff. He was very brilliant. But yeah, the uh, he would total this up, and then he would be able to show me that I had the best batting average over any other player on the team throughout the year. That's as a whole average. So I would still not get selected for the All Stars because obviously it was a politic game, and what the coaches' kids would do is if they had a friend, and then they would immediately get the friend on the All Star team. So that way, it was basically a group of all the friends from each team would just go to the All Star team to be friends on the All Star team. They didn't care about trying to win. They didn't want to. They didn't really want to pursue the best players because uh, and generally speaking, a lot of the players were decent, but they weren't, the best statistically or whatever. They weren't the best player. They would just be, a decent player, but they would be friends with the coach. So I learned this early on, just seeing this sort of thing play out and go, oh, this is how this political and power game is played. And so this is what illustrates another example of why everything is political. If your kid goes to sign up for something and they aren't, if you aren't directly trying to push your way in and get involved and try to do whatever you can to be a part of, to be as involved as you can. If you're not trying to be a coach or something like that, generally speaking, your kid is going to be ignored because this is a political game. You have to earn the favor of whoever is in charge of making those decisions. And so this is why everything becomes political in some way. And I've noticed this a lot more as I got older. So there would be other things that would happen, such as um, whenever I was selected to be tested to go to the gifted program at our elementary school. Supposedly, this was supposed to be a program for the most brilliant students, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I would have perfect grades. But then, whenever I went to take this test, which is supposed to be a sort of stat based test, assuming that they're going for that correctly, and I didn't get selected. And come to find out that some of the most unintelligible people within the class were selected for the gifted program. So I don't know how they were selecting gifted if it wasn't by the level of intelligence, because clearly they weren't. It wasn't about intelligence at all. It was about who was playing the political game, who was in favor with the principal. And so that was another eye-opening moment for me to see that this is a political game being played in front of my eyes, even as a child. And I understood this to a degree, but I didn't really know how to maneuver it or act on it. And as my parents taught me to be sort of be humble, don't put your head down and work, all this kind of stuff. but then they would later want me to go and socialize with people, which is a funny contradiction. So, anyways, the whole concept of not being involved and just putting my head down, it doesn't get me the result that I want. And it'll never get you the result that you want if you actually have an interest in pursuing something in that. So had my mom been more involved and tried to push and say, I mean, she did say try to tell them that I should be accepted. That she questioned the authority there and tried to ask, like, why is he not getting put into this program, because he's doing really well and he's making good grades, and he actually reads at a higher level than any of these other kids. So they're, clearly I was gifted intellectually very early on, but they just didn't want to do that because it was all a political game. So seeing those two instances really early on, obviously I knew something was up, which is why I knew that not every authority is made equal. Just like no two people are equal, no two authority figures or sources of authority, or people in positions of power are made equally. Those that are weak and ineffectual, generally speaking, they have to assert their authority more aggressively, and so that's why you get sort of a tyrannical leader. This is a problem in a lot of aspects, but definitely in sort of these spaces where someone who wants to have power but doesn't really or can't really act on any sort of form of power, then they're definitely going to be more tyrannical than someone who would have no power, honestly, because they can't do anything about it. So, with that out of the way, let's go to some more examples. So everything, all of these interactions become a sort of political game, whereby you can judge how who's going to get what. And it goes up to whenever I was trying to be on the baseball team in high school, and how that was a big political game. If you weren't donating every dollar you had and telling them you would sign your second born over to them, then obviously the kid who was trying to get onto the team or be the starter on the team would not get the role. And there were much worse players that got the role to be able to play. And then, and I don't want you to think this sounds like a pity party for me or whatever, because I'm not trying to say like, oh yeah, I was good, but I didn't get a shot. I did have a shot, but I didn't realize that it was a political game. This is the unfortunate truth, because I may not have been the best player, but definitely there was a role that I could have played in a lot of instances. So besides baseball, basketball was something I played I played halfway through my senior year and quit because I played all through junior high. I played JV ball, and then I tried to play on, they kept me on JV through my 11th grade year, and then I only got to play on varsity as a senior. And then whenever I got to play varsity, I didn't get to start, even though I was putting more hours in. The football team comes in, and they can just, because the football players are popular people, they're popular people, and everyone wants to see them play at the game, they automatically got the role of being a starter. And, you think it's owed to a senior to at least get to start for a little bit, or at least be very involved. Seniors should be very involved. But I didn't even get halfway through the season because I was so done with being a scapegoat, with being yelled at for making mistakes. When I go in and I'm in for 5 seconds and I miss one shot, as opposed to other people who are in and shoot 30 shots and miss all of them, and they shoot like 30% from the field ever. And I was never one to assert myself as a shooter. I was never one to assert myself to try to shoot that often. But when I did, I did let them know about it, especially whenever I had one time where I banked in a three. And of course, I gloated about it a little bit, but like they acted like I could never shoot, even though I practiced and I was pretty adept comparatively to some of the other ones. I just never got the chance, and they just acted like that wasn't a thing that I could do, and that was because I didn't assert myself and I didn't do that kind of stuff. So a little bit of a tangent, but that's kind of what happened with the basketball situation. Now, the only place where I actually saw some sort of some headway was in cross country. Basically, I was the best runner that our school had. I didn't do phenomenally. Like I didn't do great. I placed like 47th in the state meet, which was top 50. So I took it. I thought that was pretty good for me. But had I had a proper coach and proper training, I probably would have made a lot better. But a lot of what I was having to do, I was having to try to train on my own and do everything all solo dolo. It was all me. So, but you can see through this trail of sort of thoughts and the sort of events that I'm describing here, you can see that every single thing has a political component to it because all of it is a vector for power. And it doesn't matter if you're, in a position as a student or as a player that you don't have a lot of power. There's still a vector for power. I mean, do you think that LeBron necessarily has to worry about being benched tomorrow? No, LeBron is never going to be benched unless he actually wants to be benched. If LeBron wanted to play every single game all the time, LeBron would get to because he has the power because he's asserted himself into that role. So everything is political, and this is the full summation of it. Is and the whole thought that I've actually been mulling on, once I was reading this book and listening to chapters in the audiobook and everything, I start to understand that everything has a power component to it. Like every activity or every group that you can interact with has a power component to it. Therefore, it is a vector for power, and therefore people will actually use a political strategy to employ to be able to put themselves in a position of power. So there'll be deception, trickery, favors, all that kind of stuff. Will get them in favor with with the person in the position of power, and they'll try to get some level of power or usurp them depending on the scenario. But all of that is to say that if you encounter this, be aware and understand and look at all of the capabilities for how things can become a political game. Now, they may not, like I said, they may not be dictates of policy. They may not be discussing particular individual, attributes for like the being a political figure, but they will be a form of the politic game that people play to assert themselves to power. And that is the biggest struggle is because all of it becomes a political struggle, which is why you see all of the things changing in media, whether it be anything that's happening. It is all a vector for power and a political struggle, whether it be actually overt politics as far as policy-based discussions or whatever, or not. It's still a political vector, and this is why you need to view it as such and act accordingly. Like start to act accordingly. That's all. I just wanted to give this sort of a part two, and I hope that maybe that gave you some insight. Probably talked a little bit too much about my stories, because I just, it's old stuff that you definitely you remember and you recognize, but then you move on and you go about it, and you try to recalibrate everything. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did like the video, also subscribe to the channel and check the links below for anything else that I have there. But that's all I have. Did publish a couple of Substack pieces recently, I think. If you want to go check those out on my Substack, you can. Would appreciate that. And that's all I have for today. But hope you've enjoyed it. And this is Trey from Trey's Think Tank, signing out.